I wouldn't act so angry all the time. I wouldn't keep it all inside, and I'd let you know how much I loved you every day. So darling, will you stay right here and shake this frost off of my bones?
Oh Lord, now. Boom, boom. I just saw this video where T-Pain's covering a Black Sabbath song, and man, it was good. And now it's not gonna leave my head. It's almost as bad as Ella Bayar Sola. Ella Baya Sola. It's by Peso Pluma. Man, that one's good too. I've had a good day. I haven't shot a podcast in 6 months almost, because I think I released one 5 months ago and haven't thought about it since. The tempo at work picked up quite a bit, and as a result, I didn't do much when it comes to the podcast, but I wanted to get back into it. Tomorrow I'm actually shooting with someone from work. They've got their own podcast. I'll make sure to link that on Instagram at some point. And we're going to be talking about military experiences, which is something I don't very often do, especially on this podcast. It's not been the focus, and I don't think it ever would be. So you'll get to see a little bit different side of me in that. So that could be cool. That could definitely be cool. But the reason that I did this or started this brief pod, and this is like a podette, was just to kind of rehash the past couple years. It's been 2 years and some change, almost 2.5 years since I started doing this. I'd like to think I've gotten better. But I wanted to leave you with this. It's going to be the top 3 and then the bottom 1 of both the bourbons and the book that I've done over the past 2.5 years. So I'm sitting at 22, 23 bourbons, 20-something books that I've done for the podcast. I've read other things on the side. So for the people that are like, oh, I've read more than him. Okay. Cool. But the top 3 of my books, I actually still happen to have. All right, so to the books. My top 3 books. We've got number 3, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Great book, a classic. I think what you'll see with all 3 of these books is that they do something interesting that's either not done very often, the first time doing it, or just done so well that no one can really hold a candle to it. So that first one's Brave New World, and it's kind of a bit of all 3. It was the first of its kind, and is a very interesting topic, and they did it better than most anyone else. You could bring up George Orwell's 1984. There are some similarities, of course. Writing styles are somewhat different. Also, writing styles today are very different from the writing styles of, the last century. But this one holds up. There's some things that are brought up in it that are eerily happening today. So that one's strong. The second one, I've never read a book like it. It's hard for me to even explain. Granted, when anyone asks me a question about, hey, explain this book to me, while I'm in the middle of reading it, I'm like, you're going to have to read it yourself. This one's incredibly interesting. Early Riser by Jasper Fforde. I really don't know how to explain it. It's so unique. It takes on this whole new world. I got another book by him. I think it's called The Ire Affair. It's around here somewhere. But it was because of this book that I decided to get another book by him, because it's the premise, concepts within the plot line are all very different. The writing style is interesting. It's light. It's fun. It's a burn through. I think I read it in 2 days, and it was amongst a busy schedule. And then finally, number one, Fight Club. Now I will admit that it's probably because the movie was so good and because they're so nicely matched up, the two, that might have given it an extra bump when I gave that rating a year ago. But I will tell you that the plot is just as interesting, just as dynamic. The concepts within it, the kind of subtle jabs at society, I love seeing that kind of stuff. So very interesting. 3 books. I actually do also have my least favorite book that I've read in the past 2.5 years. So my least favorite book, and this can show you that I'm not pandering to classics. I'm not just falling in line with what the status quo is. So my least favorite book, getting a 1.5 out of 5 stars over the past 2.5 years and 20 some odd books that I've done this podcast for, is Utopia by Sir Thomas More. I mean, the premise is incredible. It's you're preaching up this idealistic world and what would be happening in it and how to do it, and it fell flat. It kind of felt like notes when I was reading through it, like just an unfinished product. It could have been great, but it was not. I would not recommend reading it. It's actually received the same score of Gucci Mane Guides to Greatness, the first book I did a podcast on whatsoever. All right, so as for the bourbons, I have with me Long Branch. Always have a Long Branch on you. So here's the reason why I listed Long Branch as number one. I feel like I shouldn't. If you tried it, I feel like you wouldn't have to have me tell you this. And there have been people that have asked for suggestions, and I've given them Long Branch, and they've come back to me with like, "Hey, this other person who knows more about bourbon than you tells me that Long Branch is okay," and I'm like, "Okay, that's fine. Then go with their suggestion." But I think a lot of what happens in the bourbon field is that people cling to distilleries, and I think rightfully so in a lot of respects. Some distilleries just have been pushing out better product than others. And I mean, Wild Turkey is a popular brand, but I wouldn't say that it's a very popular brand with critics. And then additionally, Long Branch is, I guess, sponsored, you could say, and they always say they've got a hand in the distillation process and selecting ingredients and how it's done. But they had a sponsor, a celebrity sponsor, Matthew McConaughey. And so I think that scares a little bit of people away from it, because I've had some experiences with liquors in the past that have been sponsored by someone, and they've been really bad. I did not like Terramana, a tequila that's sponsored by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and I thought it was going to be amazing because in my mind, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson would never lead me wrong, and he definitely did. Sorry, man, that I don't know. Back to the drawing board on that one. But with Long Branch, having said all of that, it is legitimately good. It's got the heart of bourbon to it, but it's not boring. It's not hackneyed, I guess is a better word outside of boring. It's because it's been finished in a mesquite barrel for a year after its original white oak barrel distillation and the whole process. It takes on a little bit of complexity to it, and it's interesting and different enough, but also still true enough that it excites me. Other bourbons outside of Good old Long Branch. Rowan's Creek. Rowan's Creek is really good. I'll post a little image of it. It looks, the bottle doesn't give you a lot of confidence, and for whatever reason, I usually do this with wines. I judge what wine I'm gonna get, and I'm no connoisseur. I'm no sommelier on its marketing. If it looks good, if it looks eclectic and interesting, then I'll try that wine. So if you're like that with bourbon, this would not catch the eye. It's not very extravagant. It's actually bottled in a wine bottle. The label's kind of, but the substance is good. And finally, rounding out, and this is where I'm like, I wish the top three were relatively cheaper bourbons, and the top two are, but the third one is 100% not. It's a $750 bottle, Rhetoric 24-year. It's one of those orphan barrel, which I think is out of Tennessee actually, but I digress. It's good too. Now, I will give an honorable mention to Noble Oak from Ohio. I have to mention them because they surprise me so much. I mean, I'm from Kentucky. Anything that comes out of Ohio, I'm not really interested in. But this Noble Oak is good. I even tried the rye. Pretty good itself, but the bourbon from Noble Oak is really solid. Very surprising. Super smooth, I seem to remember, and it doesn't do it at the sacrifice of alcohol content, which entities like Basil Hayden kind of do. So I'll end this with my least favorite bourbons. And one of these hurts college me quite a bit, but 1792 out. Even the small batch, and there's one other. The 1792s that I see floating around, no good. George Remus. I just saw this again on the rack here in North Carolina the other day, and I hadn't seen it in a while, and it brought up bad memories. And then the third least favorite of mine, and this is the one that hurts me, is Bullet Bourbon. College was earmarked by a bottle of Bullet Bourbon on several occasions, and I did really enjoy it at the time. But as I've aged, things have changed, and Bullet is the bottom three. So I just wanted to get back into it. I'm going to try to do my best with this editing. I'm not great at editing, and I know that because I've taken these 6 months off, I'm not going to be great at it then. But bear with me. Where did I put them? Here they are. So I can't leave without giving you a little bit of an update on what I plan on doing next, because I do plan on putting a few out over the coming month and a half or two, just to get back into it. And it's a forcing function. I do enjoy doing this, and I'm glad that I'm getting back to doing it. But the next two books that I'm gonna read for you guys, and then give a little bit of a response to, is The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson. It's tracking a murderer in the late 1800s in the Chicago area, so that should be cool. And then Factfulness by Hans Rosling, with, it looks like his family actually all wrote it. But this is going to be, I think, one of my favorite books. So what I'll say about Factfulness is that it's a little bit like Freakonomics was, in that it takes data to support some of their arguments, some of their hypotheses, that, and their overarching hypothesis is that the world is not as bad as we think it is. And it's not as in dire trouble as we think it is. And I've been saturated with negativity. And so I'm really excited to read this book to hopefully put a little positive spin on things. And I'm excited to share that with you guys as well. Of course, I pair that with a murder mystery book, but leave it to me. But hey, thank you guys for continually supporting me, in whatever respect or in whatever way that happens. I appreciate it. But anyways, love you guys. Excited to get back into this. Up to it, down to it. Damn the man that can't do it.
Well, I used to ride a Mustang, and I'd run that thing on high hopes, till they raised the price of dreams so high I couldn't pay. So I let that car just sit there, when I should have took you driving, with the windows down while the music played. So if it'd make you stay, I wouldn't act so angry all the time. I wouldn't keep it all inside, and I'd let you know how much I loved you every day. So darling, will you stay right here and shake this frost off of my bones? Darling, will you stay right here and shake this frost off of my bones?